is. We can see
Okay. All I can see is this locomotion screen, so thank you.
you. Yeah, I think when they're sharing, that's all you can see. So we're now live. This is Senate Transportation this Friday, March 29th. We're talking with Local Motion about some bike and pedestrian considerations.
Great. Yeah, my name is Jonathan Weber. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Complete Streets at Local Motion. Thank you so much for having me back. Here to talk about some updates to Vermont's vulnerable road user traffic regulations that are being considered in the House and could be incorporated into the DMV bill. Our mission is to make it safe, accessible, and fun for everyone to bike, walk, and roll in Vermont. And the first word there is safe, and that's really what these regulations are all about. They're not things that we would be proposing if we didn't think that these would make our users safer out on the roads. So this is sort of the overview of what's being proposed. Local Motion really supports these updates, and I'll get into each one in a little more depth, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for discussion here. So
What's VRU?
vulnerable road user.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah. You know, as transportation people, we just can't resist. So currently there's what I would consider a gap or an issue in our statute with our definition of pedestrian. It includes electric wheelchair users, but it does not include manual wheelchair users. So there's proposed language to address that, just to ensure that people in manual wheelchair users still have right of way and crosswalks, so that the pedestrian statutes still apply to them. Manual wheelchair users are still considered vulnerable users right now, but they're not considered pedestrians, so sort of a technical fix. Right now we have a law in the books that says that if there's a sidewalk on the street, you have to be on it. You can't be walking or using your wheelchair or walker on the shoulder. You know, at first blush, this makes sense, right? We're providing a sidewalk, people should be on it. In practice, our sidewalks are often in pretty bad shape. You can have lifted, cracked panels. There could be snow on the sidewalk. There could be ice on the sidewalk. So a lot of times, especially for someone using a walker, being on the sidewalk is just not practical. Obviously, that's where they want to be. Like walking in the roadway is really scary, but sometimes that's unfortunately a necessity. So the proposed language would remove that requirement just to ensure that we're not making it illegal for people to get around when they need to.
For all people, or just for people with walkers or wheelchairs?
I mean, the proposed language just strikes that requirement. You know, I think there are a lot of scenarios where even just a person walking needs to be in the road. For example, you know, when I'm walking my dog on the street and there's someone else with a dog or with their kid in a stroller and 5-foot sidewalk, there really isn't space for us to pass. And so sometimes
Does that make people more safe? I don't see where if you got a sidewalk and you're making assumptions that sometimes sidewalks are and sometimes they might not be or whatever, but I find like we're in my community, the sidewalks are absolutely positively great. So why would you just automatically assume that every sidewalk's bad?
Oh, no, I certainly don't assume that every sidewalk is bad. And I think ideally every sidewalk would be like the ones in your community where people don't ever need to step into the roadway. But I think in my experience, you know, and you can see in the photo here, there are a lot of sidewalks in the state where people do need to do that. So our thinking is that law should recognize that and not prohibit something that's just a necessary practice in some scenarios.
Okay.
So right now we have some law that talks about how people driving need to pass a vulnerable user, whether that's a person walking, a person in a wheelchair, or a person biking, also equestrians, sanitation workers, anyone outside of a car on our roads. Current law just recommends that they increase clearance to 4 feet as they make that pass. We think that the state should say that a safe passing distance is a requirement. It's not optional for you to give a safe clearance between, you know, someone in the shoulder and the edge of your car. So this proposal would just change the word recommended, or it would remove the word recommended as a requirement.
And does it matter if you do that, you have to cross over the center line?
So statute also talks about in what cases, how to do that safely, how to cross the center line, you know, so that there's no curve ahead, so there aren't cars oncoming. But that's all laid out in separate statute, and this would not change that.
Senator Schmidt.
Would it be a fine if they didn't do a 4 feet? So is that gonna not gonna pull you over if you didn't give a 4-foot clearance?
The current statute, I think, does include a $200 fine. I think the reality is that this is pretty hard to enforce, right? I think my perspective is that, what do we want to say as a state? Do we want to say that giving 4 feet is optional? That's just what we recommend. Or do we want to say that, no, 4 feet is really the minimum of a safe passing distance, and that's a requirement? I think the other benefit of this is that it would allow us to use MUTCD signage that shows the safe passing distance, which is not something that we can do right now.
So there's MUTCD signage that other states are using with the 4-foot requirement that we can't use.
Yeah, I believe both Massachusetts and New Hampshire, you'll see these signs on the roads.
Can I
I have a question.
Yeah, Senator Kitchell.
Well, I can understand this and, but I travel Route 2 a lot, and there are times when there is not, you don't have time to give 4-foot clearance. You might be coming around a curve. I think about coming out of East Montpelier. You're coming up a hill, there's a blind spot. I've had people there in a car coming, and you don't have time to slow down sufficiently simply because you haven't got that advanced vision. So I'm just thinking there, I don't consider myself an irresponsible driver, but I don't think I would want to cross the line with oncoming traffic, and I don't have time to slow down to make that correction. So I just think that this could be something you put on the books that might be nice, but there may be times where legitimately it's a safety issue.
Yeah, I think, that has to do a lot with the design of our roadways, and, we're working as a state to expand our shoulders. The current statute does say that, you do need to slow down when you're passing a vulnerable user and wait to make that pass until you can provide what's recommended as 4-foot clearance right now, including, if necessary, to cross over the center line to do that when it is safe to do so.
It's just difficult to do when we're in a curve and somebody's walking out, and there is no shoulder.
Yeah, and there are some scenarios where it's difficult to do that, and I think, we post advisory speeds to help people take shoulders at a speed that's safe, and maybe there are scenarios where those advisory speeds are too high for a driver to take the corner at a speed that allows them to identify if there's a user in the shoulder and react accordingly. So I think there are something we
I
need to
believe the part that I'm talking about does have the 50-mile-an-hour speed. So, okay, well, I understand what your argument.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
So similar, Senator Kitchell, I was talking to Jonathan yesterday about a lot of these, and I heard New York City referenced as successful implementation, and I think in our conversation it was a concern for me that we can't really apply New York City type standards to all parts of Vermont, because there are some pretty rural areas where people just drive faster than they're velocitized. So I think when we get the language, we're not seeing the entire language. When you velocitize, you're driving really fast, and so it's. I learned that in driver's ed. Should we elaborate on this term?
I just was wondering if there's going to be a new term that we're going to hear more often.
Well, if you're driving at 65, 70 miles an hour, like for a few hours, then all of a sudden 30 feels a lot slower than it actually is. So you just Mr. Minor taught me that in high school. But can I go back to the previous?
Yes.
All right. So on the sidewalk piece.
Yeah.
Are you proposing to strike the language entirely, to just leave it vacant, or not said whether or not you have to walk on a sidewalk?
Yeah, that's correct. From my perspective, people in a wheelchair using a walker, we don't want to be in the roadway. It's scary to be in the roadway when there are cars going by. When someone is doing that, it's out of necessity, because they really can't effectively use the sidewalk.
So I'm definitely supportive of not mandating them, because snow is not plowed and all the reasons of bad sidewalks. But if we just remove it and be silent on it, is that going to be problematic for any, kids' literature and guidance? I mean, should it be that the law is you should always walk on the sidewalk when practicable? I don't know what type of education.
Yeah, and we can look at the language. I assume you have draft language that, or is that language that the House is looking at?
Yeah, and I can show that to you if you'd like. Do you want to look at that right now?
You can just continue through, but that's kind of when we get to that point, we can.
Yeah, but to answer your question a little further, I don't think any parent is going to teach their kid to walk in the road when there's a sidewalk available. I would certainly hope. Also, this change would not make any change to rules around where to walk in the road. So you're still required to walk as far to the side as practicable, on the left side of the road facing oncoming traffic. All of that still applies. All this says is that just because there is a sidewalk present, you do not necessarily need to be on it.
Well, it was not saying that, it would just not say anything.
Right, correct. Yeah.
Let me see the language.
Yeah, okay.
So the last two changes that I want to talk about are about making bicycling safer at intersections. As I talked about, these are really about safety. These are both grounded in data and research and experience in other states. So the first allows people on bikes to use pedestrian signals at intersections. So the way this works is that if I'm at a red light on a bicycle and the pedestrian signal comes on in my direction of travel, I'm able to proceed through the intersection against that red light. The way that this improves safety is if you're on a bike and you're next to a person in a car at an intersection, when traffic starts to move, you've got cars that are potentially taking rights, and you're often to the right of those cars if you're in the shoulder, the bike lane, whatever it is. So this allows the person on the bike to get out through the intersection before cars start moving. It also means that if the person on the bike is forced to take the lane in that scenario, the people driving are not stuck behind the person biking. It means that the person biking is out in front, so in people's direct line of sight, as opposed to the side in the blind spot. The second is about stop signs. So it basically says, if I'm on a bike and I'm coming up to a stop sign and there is no other traffic present at the intersection, I need to slow, and I can cautiously roll through that stop sign instead of coming to a complete stop, having to put a foot down, having to potentially unclip if I'm using clipless pedals. If there is traffic present at the intersection, the stop sign is treated as normal. You yield as normally in statute. So this has been legal in Idaho since the 80s. They saw an improvement in safety. Delaware legalized it several years ago. They saw a significant reduction in crashes.
Why is there a reduction in crashes? I can see why you want it, but I don't see why it would stick.
So it's attributed to a few different things. One is sort of what I talked about with pedestrian signals. Intersections are very dangerous places for people on bikes. And so the less sort of exposure a person on a bike has to intersections involving cars, the lower the chances are of crashes. So this allows a person on a bike to clear intersections before there are any interactions with cars oftentimes.
So sometimes maybe these crashes or reduction is when the bike is stopped. If somebody doesn't see them or something. Turning.
Yeah, I think it could be that. I think it could be, stop signs are often confusing interactions between people biking and people driving. When I'm on a bike, oftentimes, even when I don't have the right of way, drivers are waving me through.
Yeah.
And whenever you have operators giving each other directions, it sets up bad situations. But I think the primary thing is that it just reduces the number of times that people on bikes even are at intersections where there are also drivers present, because they're clearing those intersections before there are even any cars there.
And the endorsement by the NHTSA, is that for both of these or just for the yield?
That is specifically for the stop is yield. Yeah, the pedestrian signal element is actually something that's legal in Burlington. To my knowledge, it's been really successful so far. New York City did a really extensive pilot on that policy, and it was successful there as well. So that's
legal.
Yes.
I'm asking too many questions, but this is useful stuff, and I think it's great to do it now. So let's say this is an intersection, I'm glad to show it, all right, and it's red light right here, and you got a bicyclist over there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if current law is, okay, so if red light here, but now if this is a red light, would there be a circumstance where cars over here would get a green left So they can turn left onto here, and then since they're just allowed to go left, not allowed to go straight or so on, that this sign right here would illuminate that pedestrians would be able to go if they're allowed to go left. I'm thinking of Five Corners in Essex, and so I'm just worried that if the bicyclist is in the main causeway and goes on this signal, that left-hand turn, has that been contemplated in the language you're bringing forward?
I'm not familiar with intersections that have that kind of arrangement. Typically, if you had a pedestrian signal on that crosswalk, I think you would have a red light, not a
You wouldn't want
left
You
turn
would give
there.
them the green turn and the pedestrians the right to cut.
But the green turn would be from the other way of traffic. So if it's red light here, so these guys can't go, but this person's got the left yellow turn, not that way,
Yeah,
just left that way.
yeah.
And this bicyclist sees this, he could be going, wow, these people are turning left into the lane.
But would that usually be also the pedestrian on the other side? Like, I've never seen a pedestrian light only on the right side and not on the left.
That's my question.
Yeah, I've never seen that configuration where you have a left turn with that sort of perpendicular crosswalk active. That would seem pretty sketchy to me.
So I just want, I guess,
Yeah,
clarity,
that's a
if
good
we
point.
allow for pedestrians to cross here if the only left is turning there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe we find out more about how that, I assume there's rules on that, about whether both crosswalks have to be either open or shut at the same time.
Yeah, definitely something to look into, but yeah, not something I've ever seen in terms of a signal operation.
Okay.
So that's it, and happy to take more questions and have more discussion. If you want to pull up the language, I'm happy to do that as well.
Do people want to see the legislative language, or just wait until we see what the House does? So you presented this to the House to add to the miscellaneous DEP bill.
Yep, and they've got some language drafted. It was originally in H685, and now proposed as an amendment to the DMV bill. So they had testimony from someone from former police officer who also has a lot of experience instructing law enforcement on bicycles, former bike patroller, who gave really good testimony. If you are interested in that, I'm happy to connect you with him as well.
Yeah, no, that would be good to send us our way, especially if the House is gonna add the language. Then we want to hear that.
Yes.
Are we ahead on time? Are we doing okay on time?
We're doing okay on time.
Can we go back to the previous slide? And maybe to Senator Kitchell's previous point, I'd just like to elaborate. So I think I raised this on the phone with you yesterday, and I'd love to know if this addresses some of Senator Kitchell's concern. And I'll actually use Danville, which I think should be named Janeville, as an example. So Janeville has highways. What highway is that I take going through? Route 2.
Route 2.
So I get pretty velocitized on Route 2 as I'm approaching Janeville, and then there is a light right there. But at that light, if it's a red light on Route 2, have you been through Janeville?
I have.
Okay, so on that Route 2, I don't know if there's a pedestrian crossing, but this signal would say, this language would allow a bicyclist with a red light for the cars, but a pedestrian green light to continue through that red light. Now, my concern is if a car is coming in velocitized, like I'm heading out to Santa's Village, which I usually do with the kids, and I'm coming up and for some reason I want to take a right at that light, do one of those California rolls where they're supposed to stop at the red light. My concern is a bicyclist that might, if they feel like they can just keep plowing through to not lose momentum, those right turns is where my concern would be. But you've had that consideration and that's factored into how if it's allowed for them to proceed on the pedestrian signaling, that's not a concern that right-hand turns are going to increase incidence of collision.
I think it's a valid concern. I think it's an unlikely scenario. The person driving would have to pass the person biking first. And then the person biking would have to sort of catch up to them in order for that conflict to happen. And then the two would sort of have to ignore each other's presence pretty extensively. The other thing I will say is, there are some people on bikes. There is some small number of people on bikes who will plow through a red light in the same way that there are some number of people driving who will plow through a red light. And those are very hard things to legislate, and that's really the role of law enforcement. But I think that people on bikes have a really strong survival incentive to behave responsibly at intersections, and we are on high alert when we're approaching an intersection and judging what drivers are doing, trying to forecast what drivers are doing.
Which is one reason we did the windows, I think, so you could make eye contact.
Exactly.
Are they looking at me? Do they see me?
Yeah. So I don't see that kind of behavior very likely where both users are sort of just kind of ignoring each other that way.
Quick follow-up. So I'd be curious how many other states have allowed that, because if, all right, let's say the person's abiding by the law and they come to a stop at the center of Janeville. I'm going to continue with that Janeville reference.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you're there and you're waiting to turn right and now the bicyclist is coming, but they're at the red light and this bicyclist knows they can keep going forward and that driver's knows he can go right on red. Do other states allow bicyclists to plow through on the pedestrian signaling? Because if they don't, then I'm curious if Vermont's out of step with that. Well, like Massachusetts people and New Hampshire people be like, it's a right on red and the red light, the bicyclist should have stopped. They need to abide by the traffic rules. So I guess on that point up there, it'd be helpful to just know that other states have gone in this direction. Otherwise, those right on reds, I feel like is inviting.
But I'm having a hard time visualizing it. All right, I can see the intersection, but I need to clarify this. They would cross the intersection in the where the signaling allows the pedestrian people, to protect the pedestrian. So I don't think you're supposed to be making a right on red if in fact you've got a pedestrian a signal, otherwise, in other words, if I understand it, you're allowing the people on bikes to have the same use of that pedestrian signaling as the person on foot.
That's right.
Okay.
Stop with the bicyclist.
So Mike, if that's true, then certainly if you're making a right on red and you've got the signal that says the pedestrian permission is on, you're violating a basic rule of driving, I would think. I don't think right on red gives you ability to turn even when that pedestrian signal is in effect.
Right. In some intersections, it'll say no turn on red when the pedestrian light is on. But I think what Chittenden is worried about is a bike that's kind of moving. So you're going to turn right on red. There's no pedestrian, so you start to turn just as the bike comes through the intersection.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just barreling through, seeing the pedestrian.
It's like, hopefully the bike is more concerned about their safety, so they're going to like this. Maybe the blinker's on, and they're like, I don't want to just go on the right side of a car that might be turning.
Yeah.
Senator Kitchell, did you have more?
No, I was just trying to visualize.
Yeah, it'd probably be helpful to have some little intersection diagrams for some of these.
Sure. Yeah, I can follow up with some of that as well as some information about where else this has been adopted.
Okay. Rob, did you have something?
Yeah, this is Rob Kidd with the Sierra Club. Thanks for letting me say something. We fully support this well for the Sierra Club, but I want to make a reference because I bike all the time in this town, and one of the intersections I always have a problem is the state and Main here, where actually I almost did get hit by a car. I stopped and waited, and when the pedestrian sign went on, I waited at the light, and then when the light turned green, I started biking, and then a car turned and almost hit me. And if I was able to go through that intersection when the pedestrian light was going on, I would have easily gotten through. The other car would have seen me, would have been able to make it through easier. It's just those little things that when you're on a bike that people don't even think, but a lot of people think you can go right through on a bike. I know it because I work in this stuff, but sitting there waiting is dangerous at that end of that intersection.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I will. To sort of answer the question, so when there is a pedestrian signal on and a right turn where right on red is not prohibited, cars can turn right on red through an active pedestrian signal if there are not people in the crosswalk. Right. So there is potential for the kind of conflict that you're talking about. I think, what I was expressing earlier is I think it's pretty unlikely. I think that people biking are going to approach this very cautiously. I also want to emphasize, what Rob just said. our current law also sets up dangerous situations because it puts people on bikes already in that blind spot exactly when cars start moving and taking that right on red. So I think that while there is potential for conflicts with this, it addresses probably much more common conflicts that are set up by our current law.
If the current law is that the bike has to stay far to the right, like if there's no bike lane, and they can pass vehicles on the right side, basically in the shoulder, when they're stopped at a light.
On a bike, current law instructs you to be as far to the right as practicable at all times. So you can take the intersection if there truly isn't space for various other reasons that law allows. But generally speaking, especially at intersections, people on bikes are to the right of cars, which is a bad place to be. Yeah.
The last comment on this, I think I raised this with you, is I'm not opposed to this. I just wonder if that might translate to us needing more of those big no right on red signs. But again, this is a new topic to me.
I think right on red is something that is increasingly being looked at by planners and engineers, especially in urban areas.
Right, New York.
Yeah, because it creates some problems both for people on bikes who are to the right of cars in that scenario, and also, if you're a person walking in a crosswalk, it creates a lot of pressure when cars start to move and slowly sort of take that right creeping turn. I'm sure you all have experienced that, and it's very frustrating as a person walking, and it can be dangerous as well.
But as a driver, it's very nice.
But I thought the right on red was also it was an efficiency benefit as well, in terms of just like when your car shuts off at your stop. I thought not having to, I don't know, maybe with the new technology, the benefit in terms of fuel usage is different, but I thought there was part of the argument for right on red was simply the efficiency that it provided drivers.
I've also heard that it was one of the policies implemented during the oil crisis. So I think that's accurate. And this does not change right on red at all.
Right. Okay. Thanks, John. Any other questions? Okay. We will move on.
Great. Thank you all for the time.
Be in touch.
Velocitized.
We are now velocitized.
In parentheses, an automobile driver to misjudge or become unaware of true speed or to become drowsy as a result of prolonged traveling at a high speed.
Thank you.
As on an open highway or through Janesville.
Well, I'd like you to know that once again, Route 2 was a Paleo Indian trail, so it really predates me by about 12,000 years.
Wow.
Jane's Corner, you could call it, the intersection there.
Right.
Okay. So we're switching back to 868. Basically, and I'm talking about the central garage budget. I think specifically we wanted this because of the 868's movement of some of the central garage funding. I don't know if Todd, you were gonna go first and talk to us about this, and do you have something prepared, or are you just here to answer questions?
We're here to present, Dave's gonna present on the central garage budget.
Okay. So you can join us up here. I mean, I don't know if you've presented the budget on central garage before.
Once last year.
Oh, okay. So you didn't do it specifically this year? No, we don't.
Just say no to audio.
What?
I mean, the talkers timings. We're considering possible for amendment.
No, it's outside. You should be able to. Good morning.
My name is Dave Thurber. I'm the superintendent of Central Garage. We're here to do our first presentation, I guess, this year of this Central Garage budget and some of the things we're planning on doing, planning on buying and that sort of thing. And
Oh, welcome.
Thank you. Actually, it'd be hard if I use that. I don't have the, all memorized. Thank you. I continue.
Yeah.
So we have, on this slide, the FY '24 has passed.
And this is a tab in book.
Yes,
Central
it
Garage.
Yes,
You know which one it is.
if you're not, sorry.
Utah. I do not. Sorry. You guys don't want to do this. You just give it to us because you're not. Michelle, do you know? It's 12.
It's 12.
Well, okay.
Okay.
So we're at about 23.9 million. Our recommended this year is 24.6, an increase of 718,000 or 2.91%, which has been pretty much where we've been over the last few years, about 3% year over year for an increase. A lot of that is due in part because of increased pricing on everything that we purchase, parts and vehicles and things like that.
Maybe you have a slide on this, but is all of this just transferred from the fund into Central Garage Fund?
Yes. So we do get a supplemental transfer that is 1.6 million, which I think kind of covers inflation for us. A large part of our equipment fund is from the depreciation, 6.8 million. And then our auction proceeds of 1.5, and all of that goes to make up the equipment fund, which I buy equipment through, which is 9.9 million. We did have a slight change in statute last year, which is allowing me to take a little more depreciation for some of the vehicles that fully depreciated. It might ordinarily be auctioned, but because it's been difficult to get vehicles, they're still in the fleet. So it's appreciated that change was made. I think it's a 3-year.
That depreciation, this money transferred from the T fund.
Yes, I believe, if I remember correctly, it is all T-funded with the exception maybe of the auction.
And is usually the Central Garage Fund balance, all of it transferred in or just, carried forward?
For the record, Todd Law, the acting director of fleet. So Central Garage provides equipment to all the users, the majority are maintenance. They provide lease bills every month to the users. So every month we send out bills to all the users, and that's the proceeds that Central Garage uses because they're an internal service fund. But yes, it's all transportation funds. After the fact, there is some transfers from, if we're on a project or something, or like this last year, we had emergency response. The districts for the maintenance pays the bills, and then we reimburse the transportation fund for additional proceeds.
That internal service fund is what's on here is the transfer from the Central Garage Fund balance?
That typically, as Dave said, would be a transfer from the T fund, but this year we are taking it out, and Bradley made the decision because we have a fund balance, an unrestricted fund balance in Central Garage that because the T fund is underproducing and the forecast is down, the decision was made for that 1.6 million to come out of the Central Garage unrestricted fund balance rather than trying to transfer in from the transportation funds.
Okay. So the internal service fund, that was lease payments as opposed to the.
They're not live.
They're not. Sorry, John. So basically on the left side is what would equate to the equipment fund, and on the right-hand side is our personal service and operating. So the equipment fund is separate. I can't take anything from that to cover personal services. So the lease rates cover the other side, the operating personal service. Personal
Okay,
service.
so like the difference from the equipment fund is that 9.9 million.
Yes.
So a $24 million cost, the difference, those lease payments, basically the internal service fund makes up that difference.
Yes. Any other questions here? Okay. Here's a quick slide on our fleet value. So we have spent 51 million in equipment purchases, 22 in upfitting, for a total cost of 74 in the current. So if we had to purchase everything all at once, we would have to expend 74.6 million to replace everything. Obviously, we try not to do that. And the depreciated value is $30.2 million.
This is like at the end of the last fiscal year.
Um,
You do it once a year.
Yeah, I do it once a year. It's generally April timeframe. That's when I develop the lease rates too, so I kind of put this all at the same time. So it is a year. Here, there's a typical tandem axle plow truck cost. In 2021, the chassis were 113,000, and we went back out to bid in 21 or 22, and they increased to 128,000. And our upfit costs have gone up also from 81 to about 130,000. So our total unit cost has gone from, just for our tandems, and it's about half the fleet, 125 trucks. Gone to 194,000 a piece to about 258. We have made some changes on the trucks to hopefully reduce some of our maintenance costs. But overall, I mean, that was figured into the increase in the upfit costs.
And you're keeping them the same length of time.
Approximately, we shoot for 8 years. We do keep a number of trucks as spares. So we identify the trucks that we traded, we trade them out, keep some of those for spares for another year. So we have trucks to fill in if something breaks down during the winter. And then we move those on. We might keep them a couple of years if they're in good shape. To help fill in.
Do you have an auction every year?
We actually shoot for 2. We'll be having the spring auction in May. And then we're shooting for 1 fall auction in November, which will be an online auction.
Where are you gonna do the, are you still gonna have it at the same place, or is that?
This
not-
year, yes, we'll be at Central Garage for the auction. Very much the road.
And how does that auction work? Just, you have an auctioneer that you use, you guys do it in-house as far as an auctioneer, or?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
They go out to bid. BGS goes out to bid for an auctioneer, and we have Auctions International. They're actually out of Buffalo, New York. And they'll come in, they put all the lot numbers on, and then they'll come back the next week and hold the auction. And then when we do an online, it's the same company. We send them pictures and condition reports, and they post it all on their website. We have customers, at least with interest from Ohio and other.
So they're bringing in their customer base, and
Yeah,
I was hoping that was the way that you had done that it was, that it just wasn't the local, that you were using somebody that had the power of nationwide.
yeah, I'm not sure how nationwide they are, but they're certainly East Coast, Mid-Atlantic up. And they've been very good. And we do have actually a lot of Vermont buyers, particularly in the physical auctions for BGS surplus can break that all down where folks are from. It's kind of neat to see that there's a lot of Vermonters that come in, and a lot of them think of it as a passage in the spring.
I would point out, so we had a few municipalities in the last couple of years that had significant breakdowns in their own equipment. And we had 2 or 3 of them come in to buy loaders and greeters, and so they've been they've been very active, along with our friends in New Hampshire and Maine, so they can see our old footballs on a lot of the contracted equipment that's in those states. So I think that helps our auction proceeds. But as Dave said, that the auction is run through Buildings and General Services surplus. So they, by statute, they dispose of all of the state equipment. So
this spring auction will contain items from many agencies, Forest and Parks, Fish and Wildlife, Central Garage, of course, State Police, even DGS fleet, they will bring their cars down. So it's a pretty wide variety of stuff.
Nothing outside of the state, nothing, no private, to bolster maybe the draw of the auction or anything.
No.
$1.50 hot dogs.
There we go.
The Boy Scouts have been a fixture for a number of years now.
Oh, yeah.
They come in and do hamburgers, hot dogs, and it helps them out quite a lot. We do, or I should say surplus does allow for municipalities to sell through that auction as well. And we've had some very town equipment, some school buses. Okay, here's a slide that shows the purchasing plan that I developed. It shows fiscal year 24. And you can see if you look close down at the bottom, there's some numbers that are underspent in 24, which I don't think is actually the case. This is the plan that I try to stick to, but then you also see some numbers that are overspent, which I do not do, but I like to leave it there as a reminder. So when I'm looking back at this, I can say, if something comes up and somebody needs an expensive piece of equipment replaced or something, I'll look at this and say, I don't know, yes we can or no we can't. There is 2 fiscal year 25 columns there that just show a couple different scenarios for different types of purchase.
Is any of your equipment ever leased out to municipalities?
We have loaned some spare equipment out before, but typically no.
Loan for a fee, or just like, hey, we know you need this, we have one sitting around, so we borrow it?
Yeah, it's been spare dump trucks. Their truck is down, they have a storm, they need something. It's not a lot, but we have loaned out some trucks and we let them use them. They put that truck on their insurance. And they borrow it with the expectation if they break it, they'll fix it.
Because we heard from municipalities after the storm, the flood, about there's some of the specific information, specific equipment that it would be nice if the state had that they could use, because they don't want to buy it for the storm that happens every once in a while, but around the state it might happen more frequently.
Not too often. Like I said, the last few years we've had some requests, especially now that it's a little harder maybe to get some of the parts. We did supply 3 trucks to Chester.
Charlotte.
When
They had a fire 2 years ago and it decimated right in the middle of winter, so.
Or their trucks and everything, so we supplied some trucks for them to use. So it's somewhat difficult to charge them because of the way we're structured.
It's really set up that way.
Yeah.
So that would be part of it. We'd have to kind of set up a whole way to do an internal service fund, external service fund.
Yeah. So
And you don't have vacuum trucks because you're not really vacuuming in sewers. And that was one of the things that they want, but you guys don't use it just because you never have to vacuum anything.
no, there are 2 vacuum trailers that the districts have purchased. They're small. You can tow them behind a pickup, and they were using them for DI clean out some of those things.
Culverts. We just purchased them 2 or 3 years ago, the districts did, with some of the surplus money that the legislature allowed us to use because we had mild winters. So we bought 2 of them that are used throughout the state. And they're mainly used for, like Dave said, cleaning out catch basins, drop inlets, and cleaning storm sewers. So all the
Catch
culverts,
basins,
et cetera.
what do they connect to?
To the stormwater that goes out to the river, so we have an obligation through our TS4 permit to clean all of that, to sweep streets, so we do have some sweepers, they're not we have one actual mechanical street sweeper, that's very old, that's constantly being repaired.
Yeah.
But we do have some that go on loaders, we have some that go on trucks and skid steers that we collect. They're not as efficient as those full-blown sweepers, so we actually hire some of them. Contractors have a lot of them, and we have intermunicipal agreements with some areas, South Burlington being one of them, that at least used to sweep some of our roadways as part of the former MS4 permitting. So, that's one of the things, as a former public works director, that's one of the strengths is buying, and like you said, in Montpelier, we bought our own Vector truck because we need to clean sewer, we have to clean storm drains, culverts. But if it's not being used, it's almost as bad as not having it, because when you finally use it, there are significant repairs that are needed. So having it active, and there used to be a fairly substantial mutual aid agreement through Vermont Emergency Management with a lot of different municipalities for things just like that.
Yeah.
Because you can get paid through emergency declarations for using other equipment or contractors, et cetera. So, we use a lot of contractors to clean a majority of our systems, a lot of the culverts, et cetera. And there's several of them that are on
And then
contract.
mutual aid agreement is in place anymore?
I'm not, I don't know. I've been out of that realm for 10+ years now, so.
Senator Schiff.
Similarly, you asked about if the state regularly loans equipment to municipalities. Does the state ever borrow equipment from municipalities on a regular basis? Do they have specialized equipment that you've had to tap them, so to speak?
The only ones very, very seldom, but sweepers, in some areas will reach out.
Do they charge us?
There are certain ways of paying municipalities. There are certain ways that we can do the same. We can actually charge through some of the funding allotments that the state has, but it's somewhat infrequent. We actually had through our stormwater permitting with South Burlington is how we got some of the sweeping for the MS4 permit.
That's what I thought. So I don't think we charge them, but they charge us.
I think, like Todd said, it's pretty infrequent either way, so. Like I said, a lot of times with the trucks, it's a couple of days, or they just felt they needed something just in case. But this winter, I don't recall that we had any requests for an extra dump truck.
We had a couple of towns that had reached out, but then never got it, that had breakdowns. That's one of the issues. That's one of the reasons the state said why we carry spares.
For our breakdowns.
Our breakdowns, it happens, especially when we're pushing things pretty hard, but, it is kind of a security blanket for us during the winter months. We really don't have, with 250 trucks, only having 25, we could have a majority of them, in some sort of repair, but being out there to make the road safe, obviously, is our first and foremost. But the municipalities have the same issue, and they're dealing with, a lot of times either they're fixing them themselves or going to the vendors. And with the vendor, they're waiting for parts much like we are. There are other vendors and contractors that have their stuff in. So a lot of times it can be months before they get anything repaired.
Okay. So again, this is my plan. Try to stick to it as close as possible, but it does change.
Sure. This is your last slide. Yeah, can you go back to the first slide?
It was the
Or the overall budget, so that's
This way.
okay. So in the 868, when they have your operating expense, which is not like a line you kind of, I guess you have operating costs, but that's different than what, I don't know if what the difference is with that Logan, what this is operating expense, which is in the book, personal services and operating expenses.
So our operating is buying parts, buying tires, buying fuel.
That's what this line, this 9.1 million is just all that. So in the book, the operating expenses,
Okay,
19 million. So I think that must be your operating costs and your equipment
Plus.
costs. Yeah,
It's pretty, Logan would rate our physical, it's pretty much everything, not salaries, not personnel.
so if you took the 24,600 and minus the 5,400 for personnel, that's what is operating expenses.
They have a breakdown of their budget. I didn't detail one if you want to go through the specifics, but yeah, generally speaking, it's broken down into the personnel costs and the operating costs, then salaries make up most of the personnel, and then everything else goes to the group.
It's mostly lines, but it's all line things.
Yes, we do a lot of that.
And what the House T-bill did is took this $1.7 million that you were gonna use to buy. I can't remember if it says specifically things, but basically it takes money out of your operating expense.
I believe it would have taken out of the.
Can you go back to the equipment plan, please?
Yes.
So, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to come in. So as you can see, I mean, this expends all of that equipment plan money. If we were to go take 1.7 million out, we would have to make cuts here. The other thing that we're working on right now, because I know I think a lot of this was vehicle equipment electrification. We have made some expenditures in electric vehicles. We are working with environmental conservation, DEC, air quality on tapping into some of the Volkswagen funding to do exactly that, along with some of our carbon reduction funds have been obligated. I know Michelle can probably speak better to this. But we're actually looking at EV infrastructure and EV equipment. And we did get the last two Ford Lightnings that we ordered a couple of years ago that had kept getting bumped, and they're being outfitted now to be utilized. And we're actually demoing a 55,000 pound larger excavator. We have a Mini that's in our garages right now. But with that, what we're figuring out is we need to expand our EV infrastructure. We started with all 9 district garages. Now we're looking at our fleet maintenance facilities, because of course, if we have to maintain it, we need to make sure we can charge them and not through a welder port, something that's a little more efficient and effective. So we are really getting into this more and more with the help of Andrea Wright and Patrick Murphy from Michelle's shop. So, they are definitely the resident experts and are really helping out a significant amount.
So the 1.7 million that they're taking out of central garage is, operating costs basically. But there was money that money, if I remember correctly, they were saying that was already going to be used for EV or EV purchase within central garage.
No.
It's not right now. As you can see up here, I mean,
It was just like, you're gonna have to find 1.7 million
Yes.
in there somewhere.
They're being
But it was part of
given,
production.
they're being given 1.7 million to use for fleet electrification, and then 1.7 million is being taken from their budget, but through another program, they're being given 1.7 to be used, that they have to use on fleet electrification.
I see.
So the 1.7 that would be taken back would significantly reduce viability to either buy dump trucks or pickups or some of the other things that we still need.
What was the thinking, and I know you can't speak for the house, but I don't know, Logan can, was thinking that they would add 1.7 million and that some of these things would be electric. So maybe they buy an electric loader.
What they want to electrify is up to them, but $1.7 million of whatever they want to do with their budget has to go toward fleet electrification is how it's currently laid out.
So the biggest issue we're seeing right now is that the increased costs in electric equipment and electric vehicles, it doubles the price.
Right.
So that would significantly reduce what we can use. And right now, the vendors are telling us they do not make a plow truck. And that's $7 million of our 9.9 million. So
you did buy one electric loader. Did you try a Volvo?
it was a compact, so it's a mini,
Smaller.
smaller. Yeah, it works in one of our satellite garages. We're actually looking at potentially doing that in another satellite garage. because it's only filling 2 trucks.
Can I borrow it this weekend?
Can you borrow it? Yeah, right. If you could join the internal service fund, you could pay.
We'll hire you. But, so it has limited uses right now. In some of the bigger garages, it wouldn't be feasible because it's a much smaller bucket, it's much less efficient and effective, so.
You store it in the house.
And was this testimony, did they talk to you about this when they were doing this in the house?
Yeah, since I wasn't aware of it, I was actually away when.
Actually, I don't remember too much talk about
It
electrification.
was basically you figured out where to electrify and you have other, I mean, I guess they're taking this carbon funding, which is federal funding, and it's saying to electrify Central Garage. And then taking it out of something else. This is a kind of a way to wash the money.
So and as I said before, one of the things that we really need to electrify our fleet is the charging systems. So that cost alone would detract from replacing with equipment. I mean, we're looking at a significant amount. We have a few level 2s across the state. But some of this bigger equipment, they said in order to be practical, we need a level 3. Because, if we use it for a significant amount, and if we have an emergency, we're gonna need some faster charging than we have capabilities right now. So there's gonna be a lot of additional funding. And again, we've been working with Andrea and Patrick, just trying to figure out how we can increase our electric charging capabilities.
So yeah, it'd be good if you buy some forklifts or something. Senator Kitchell?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not there, but I'm just trying to distill what is being said here. First of all, the 1.7 originally came out of federal grant that comes with obviously restrictions. It got laundered through and you got 1.7 of your T fund got taken out, replaced with 1.7 that would restrict its use to electrical purchases, which you've outlined is not practical, would have significant impact on your fleet. And 1.7 out of as a percentage of your total funds, which is what, the 9.9, I guess, I'm not sure, 25, is a significant percentage that would be restricted in an area that you don't think is feasible from a technology perspective or a cost perspective as well. Am I getting? I'm just trying to distill a lot of the conversation and a lot of the information flowing around, but I just want to be clear in my mind that this switch of money and the restricted use that it would have in terms of what you need versus what you could utilize the funding for is a source of concern, a mismatch, and you do not support it. Is that, am I walking away with a clear understanding?
Sounds like that's my understanding. Is that right?
If I may, yes. To the point where it's not that I don't support it. I know it's coming. Very much right now, I can buy very big loaders that are electric, very big excavators are very small. I could buy Ford Lightnings, which are good for transportation, getting people here and there. All the stuff in between, the pickups that we use for plowing and the plow trucks and a lot of the equipment. We've kind of over the years, of course, got to a size of equipment like our excavators that work. I don't, I understand the ramifications of electrification and the environmental impacts and stuff, but I can't buy something right now that's the size that we need, the size that we use, and I don't want to. The electric.
No, I don't want to put you in an awkward position. I'm just, for us, trying to make decisions and prioritize how money is being used and cost and so forth. I don't want anyone. I don't want you to feel as though you're being asked to make that false dichotomy that if you don't support this 1.7 and the way it's coming to you, that somehow you're against the carbon reduction or long-term electrification of the fleet. So in no way am I wanting to put you in that position.
Not feeling that at all. I just wanted to give a
Yeah.
little, a little background,
Okay, all right.
uh, so, yes.
That's helpful, I understand. Any other questions?
Senator
Central
Burchett.
Garage, yeah.
For the record, Michelle Boomhauer. I don't think Todd covered this or Dave, but we have $2 million already programmed in FY24 of the carbon reduction program monies for Central Garage. And so with those, it's not in there because it's the FY24 budget, so it's already been approved for carbon reduction programs. And that's going to enable us to install 6 level 3 charging stations. As Todd mentioned, we need them around the state. We're looking at potentially 6 Ford Lightnings and then 10 level 2 chargers. So we continue to have at least some accessibility, as mentioned, when we have a fleet either being worked on or, overnight charging. So, I think that also ties into why this money wouldn't be able to be as well deployed, not only because we have other plans for fleet needs, but also we're doing a lot in 2024.
You already were spending $2 million this year. What was, how many lightnings?
10 lightnings. No, 6.
6 lightnings. And was all the chargers level 2, or were you gonna do?
I know, 6 level 3s. And we're looking at places, so we already have identified locations where we have 3-phase power, and then we're looking at what additional power accessibility needs we might have to continue, because we're gonna need level 3 charging in all of the garages as we go
Okay,
forward.
and this was, you told the House Transportation Committee?
I don't remember if we reported out on these details. Andrea probably did when she was giving her presentation, but I know we've both been more recently sort of coming to finalization on what the FY24 plan was gonna be. So it could be that not all the details have been worked
And
out.
some of this might flow into FY25.
At this point, it's looking like we'll have
You
some
might not get the
carry
delivery of the
forward.
lightning
Yeah.
this year.
And just to point out, to Michelle's point, we looked at 6 locations for level 3s because of 3-phase power considerations. We actually have 5 garages. This is from Brad Mack, where we have 5 garages that have 3-phase power right now. And that's it. Everything else is single phase. So we can only
5 out of how many total?
62. So it restricts.
Right, because they're often not in areas where there's other stuff. They're just by a highway or something, not by where there's other
The
development.
funny thing is, one of them that has 3-phase is Tunbridge Garage, which is a satellite garage,
Yeah.
in Tunbridge. It's not even a full-time garage, so funny enough that, it's right next to the World's Fair, but maybe we tapped into that.
Right. The World's Fair electric got updated, I remember a few years ago. Yes.
Do you know if on that line of where you're bringing that, why haven't we spent the money this year? And does that factor into if we allocate more, we're probably not gonna be able to spend it anyway? Have we not been able to?
It's just taken a while for us to come up with the right plan, investigating the capabilities of the level 3 charging, determining what fleet vehicles we're gonna fit in. And, this is sort of a newer area for Central Garage, and I think Dave and Todd are, now sort of becoming integrated, and that thinking is like part of the planning process and the thinking. And so I think this is really our big kickoff year for more heavy investments. We've been doing it for a while, as you've seen over the years, but this is starting to become more real.
And the lightnings are ordered?
They are not.
No, we just, like I said, just a couple weeks ago, we received the last 2. It took us 2 to 3 years to when we first ordered, it got bumped. Ford wasn't producing them, or
Are they not allowing you to order them, or you just haven't ordered them? Or you said like, we'll order them one week, but they're just saying that we're not even taking orders.
Yes, Mr. Davis, we'd rather that.
So I'm at or near the end of my equipment fund for fiscal year 24.
Except for this 2 million that you have, the special for electrification.
Yeah, we
That-
just decided on those.
Yeah, that's not part of my equipment funding.
Right.
So I'm down to 300,000. and what I need to do to order is actually put them on a PO. So I might be able to fit them in. I haven't.
What you're saying, Michelle, is that you just decided late to do the
Yes.
F-150 as part of it.
So, yeah, so we just need to work with the budget office to move the carbon reduction program funds into the equipment program funds so that Dave has the money in his account to do the POs. I think that's the gist of it, Lindsay and Mike.
Okay.
To the best
Making it all
of my,
sound easy, but I don't know.
to the best of my knowledge, also, this would be the first time, at least in the 25 years that I've been there, that Central Garage has used any federal funding for any equipment purchase.
Okay, great. Well, we gotta move on. Is there anything else? This has been helpful to understand Central Garage's budget better.
Any other questions for me?
Doesn't look like it. Thanks for doing this.
Okay. Gave you all good information?
Yeah.
It's helpful. Thank you for your time.
Oh, while Lindsay's here, one more thing. Did we determine if,
Do you wanna remind us who this is?
yes, and I'll let her introduce herself, but I just want to cue it up for her. Whether there are restrictions on moving the central garage funds sort of out of the central garage in the manner that was contemplated by the House or passed by the House, I should say. And you can introduce yourself and speak to that.
Sure, Lindsay Gillette, Budget Director at Division of Finance and Administration. I can speak to it at a high level. I know that there are concerns, but I'm not able to speak on the specifics. So I guess from a level of flagging that and the applicability of using those funds in that manner, it is something that's being looked into.
Right. There is restrictions on what Central Garage funds can be used. I think we talked about that somewhere else. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. We will have Donna come up. Do people need to take a break, or should we just go right into talking to Donna? Okay.
Morning.
I don't know if this is, well, it's Donna Russo, Savage Legislative Council. I'm not sure if this is what Lindsay was talking about, but in the big bill, there is a notwithstanding language to allow that transfer to occur.
Okay. Because I remember, I don't know if it was in this bill somewhere else, we were talking about that Central Garage.
What are you talking?
Correct. That got moved from the House as passed into the big bill.
So they just not withstood is what how they got around.
Correct.
Okay.
And they not withstood it and then, yeah, and then said, we are transferring.
Right. Now, notwithstanding the restrictions. Yeah.
Is that correct as far as you know, those new restrictions? Yeah, okay.
So this is our last day with Donna, so we are hopefully gonna make use of your time. I'm trying to think of if you have a new,
I have a complete strike all and also a new side-by-side. And I can pull up that,
Can we do the co-host?
so I can share my screen or?
Should be able to.
Okay.
and then do we have,
Post that though, do you want me to?
I don't think you need to post that.
Could you send it to me, though? Email me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, well, no, you're bringing it up on the screen. It's fine. I don't,
Yes, I'll email you the side by side.
Megan,
that'd be great. Thank you.
is there a way to get rid of this so that it's not covering it up or?
With that.
Thank you.
And you can move it wherever you want, like. up and down.
Oh, okay.
So do we have a hard copy of this? Because since I was doing hard copies before
Oh,
I'll get you one for center angles, but I can make you one.
Here, you want this? Here.
I can, no.
you can have mine.
No,
I'll
I
make-
can go online.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, if I need to,
Okay, I'm gonna leave it
Senator
right there.
Kitchell, would you like me to scroll or are you looking at it
I'm actually
yourself?
online.
she doesn't have it.
I'm sending it to her.
Because if you would like to scroll, then I'll just get out of this because
Okay,
it'll be very fast scrolling.
all right.
But I'm happy to do it if you prefer, whatever you'd like.
No, I've got my other computers right beside me, so I can once I have it, I can just look at it on my, just like as if I had a hard copy.
So Megan, I can just stop, so I can just stop screen sharing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna get out of here. Thank you.
So how do you want to do this now? Do you want to go through the side by side kind of thing, or do you want to go through the
It's
document, the 62 pages?
whatever you would like. I can, let you know what's here. There is one change, I can tell you where there are changes. On page 6, Senator, this is in the new section 2, which gives the summary of the greenhouse gas reducing provisions. And this was, the language that, Senator Kitchell had requested that.
What page are you on, Donna?
Page 6.
Do you have it now, Senator Kitchell?
Yep, I do. And I'm on page 6 and, I see, number 5.
Yes. This is the, more specificity about the rail program that you requested.
Oh, great. Thank you. It was just a way of showing why it was beneficial.
Um,
Oh, this is it, that last sentence is the petition.
Yes, that's basically all it does, is it puts why, what the gain is. So that's fine with me.
Okay, next change.
then you'll see that sections 2 through 6 are all in gray because you haven't made any changes to those yet. Those are all the money sections.
So you put things in gray that are open.
Yes.
As no budgets.
On page 18, line 19, you'll see that I corrected 10,000 to 10 million.
That's important.
The next change, which is something to discuss, and Michelle probably can be helpful with this, is, well, you'll see on page 24, line 14, I just put a notation that section 9 was deleted, and you'll also see that all of the Senate section numbers are intact, but they're red, just to remind everyone that everything doesn't need to be renumbered.
Okay.
But in section 15, page 30, line 9, this was that percentage for the incentive for electric fire fleet program. And you were discussing whether it should be 20 or whether it should be 25. And someone in Michelle's office explained why 25 is the preferred amount.
For the record, Michelle Boomhauer, you can see with transportation in our guidance documents, and in practice, we've been using 25%, which is amount similar to other incentive program thresholds that are of this nature.
Okay,
So that's okay?
we're okay with that?
Okay. The next reminder is on page 33, section 18. This relates to section 6, so depending upon what you do in section 6, you could still keep some of this, but you might need to change it if you got rid of section 6 or amended section 6.
This is really just about transfers of money. If they wanted to, they could transfer, but it doesn't actually transfer it.
Except that B says that any funds that they took from fiscal year 24 monies would get backfilled by the appropriations you're making to for e-bikes.
Right.
So,
if we don't do any, there wouldn't be any money back.
exactly. So it's just something that you're going to need to look at to decide how you're going to deal with it. On page 36, line 16, rather than current, I think it was status of EDSE available.
Condition, it was conditions.
Correct, and now it's operability. On page 36, line 16.
Yeah.
Page 37, again, sections 22 and 23, just that notation.
On the side beside, did they tell us what those, they do tell us what they were,
What were?
what the deleted section was.
Yes, if you look in
They
the
were
House as passed.
EDSE funding plans, because we just felt like that was not.
Right.
In the regulation, 23 was the weights and measures parts.
So section 24, which is on page 37, beginning on line 11, this was updated language, but then you also asked for a couple of changes that are on page 17 and, line 17 and line 19. But then also I forwarded this to Senator Perchel because you were going, yesterday, because you were gonna share it with folks.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had the chance or
I
not.
had not.
Okay, so that is still in gray because it's still, you know, you're not sure if this is the language you want or not. The next is section 28, which makes those changes that I had neglected to make, page 42. So page 42 on line 3, changing less to fewer. On page 42, line 15, moving over that reference to the Vermont Transportation Equity Framework as a lead-in to what is in subdivision 4.
And now what,
And
that's because we moved it from over here.
exactly,
Yeah.
and on page 43, changing that framework to be other stakeholders on line 11.
So you had struck it from there, but this doesn't show it.
Struck. Oh, the,
Vermont Transportation Equity Framework.
correct, right, it just is.
Because it's not a stakeholder. That's why we took it out.
And it doesn't show that it's being structured because it's all new language, so right. The next change is, I think the
Glad
new.
you got the Oxford comma there.
You can always count on me for that, Senator.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't know why there's a mark on
Page
page
52. That
52.
blue mark. Looks like that a comma.
That might have been something that the editors added and then asked if they wanted.
It looks like it's just highlighting that comma.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why that is. I can check that out. If that might have been a question they had, and so they highlighted it. Section 32 on page 53 is deleted, and then we begin.
32 was the transportation funding study.
Correct.
Oh, that was the one where we've already had three funding studies in the past.
Correct. Page 53, line 16 begins the 3 road usage surcharge sections. And so you'll see on page 53, line 18, it takes out the except as provided in or notwithstanding or whatever that language was that accepted EV cars from the annual registration fee. So that's all been removed, and now it. No, on 53. On the way that I had
Well, it's
drafted.
been removed and it's not visible.
Exactly, because it was new language. The way that I had drafted it yesterday was I had made it all
On the
a
separate.
registration.
Yeah.
Right, and now it's not a registration. It is, they register, EVs register and pay the registration fee just as any other car does, like pleasure car does. So that new language is no longer there.
So, yeah, I think I know what your question is gonna be, should or shouldn't.
So it was on the section we deleted, not necessarily a question. I just want to get our narrative correct because I was mistaken in a previous comment. So I had interpreted this as what they proposed as a study on public transportation, but I think the study that we are proposing to delete is really on funding the entire transportation network as gas taxes are declining. So I don't know of any previous studies on broadly. We do have those.
Get you those?
Okay, so they do exist. Fair enough.
Oh, that's been mined.
Understood.
Just political will to
That's like
move on
section
any.
3, in a way is talking about that too. You know, because it talks, the funding that the treasurer is gonna
Yeah.
give recommendations, that's also looking at the overall transportation, the way I see that.
Yeah.
Even though the title looks at emission reductions, it could just be funding for teaching in general. Okay, so the registration.
What
fee-
is there noise?
On the hallway.
A lot of action in the hallway.
Sounds like
Now-
children.
Pretty good at
So
addition.
now we're making clear that it's a road usage surcharge. Okay.
Correct. So I'm
And getting making it very separate from registration.
correct. So page 54, line 1, subsection B is the road usage surcharge, which would be in addition to the registration fee in subsection A for a fully electric vehicle that would be equal to the amount of the annual fee collected in subsection A, if it's an annual one, or the biennial biennial road usage surcharge that would be equal to 2 times the annual fee collected in subsection
I
A.
think it's a lot simpler way to do it.
Yeah. And then C is essentially the same. It's set up exactly the same. This is for the plug-in hybrids. And you'll see on line 8 of page 54 that for annual surcharge, it will be 1/2 of the amount of the annual fee collected. And the biennial would be equal to the annual fee collected for registration. Subsection D, which begins on page 54, line 11, then says that both the annual and biennial road usage surcharges collected in B and C shall be allocated to the transportation fund for the purpose of increasing Vermonters' access to electric vehicle supply equipment, charging ports, through a program or programs selected by the secretary, which may include programs administered by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development.
So that's really dedicating this money. I thought we didn't like doing that.
I like doing it. Sometimes Senator Mitchell doesn't.
I think for the purposes of this transition period, it's not, but long-term, I don't like doing this. So I think this directly connects the surcharge with the issue that we've got to have that robust network in order to get the take-up we want. So for this purpose and its transition, I think it's okay to do for this. But I would say once we get to a very robust and we move to maybe the MBUF, this needs to go away because you do need to have that flexibility in your revenues.
That's a follow-up question.
Yes.
So this is a new guy question.
So good. New guy. The new guy.
Yeah, right.
Is this effectively when I hear people talking about creating a special fund, is this language creating a special fund?
No. It's not creating a special fund. It's just saying within the T fund, this would be allocated. So I think it's okay.
Is there any value in language for the section either that the agency would like or that we would like that says this is seen as a bridge to something else?
Yeah, we could put some language in that doesn't sort of constrain this in perpetuity. I mean, in other words, this allocation would I don't know, be terminated, just like we're terminating the surcharge. We could align it in the same way. So it's clear that it's not an ongoing commitment of these revenues. Because the surcharge, as we are growing the EV fleet, it's going to be generating more revenues. But we can always revisit in future legislators, but you at least could put in that this is only an interim allocation.
John, do you have a thought about that?
If we get to section C, that addresses it in one way. You can see if you're happy with the way it addresses it, or if you'd like something in addition or something
And
else.
C because we don't know what the number will be.
Correct.
So
B is it basically is exactly what you've seen before. It is asking for public outreach on the on
D.
No, B.
Oh, B over here.
On page 54, line 17. This is asking for public outreach. The only real change in this is that it's changed from the registration fee language to road usage surcharge language. On page 55, section C, which begins on line 3, and if you flip to the effective date section, you'll see that section C takes effect on the effective date of MBUF, whenever that's enacted, would repeal the surcharge for fully electric vehicles, which is lines 6 through 10 of page 55. Those little asterisks indicate that the surcharge on hybrid vehicles would remain in place, if that's what you would like to have happen. And then if you get to subsection D, page 55, line 12, you'll see that it says the annual and biennial road usage surcharges collected in subsection C, which is the plug-in hybrids, shall be allocated to the transportation fund, period. So at that point, it's just clarifying that it still will go to the transportation fund, but all of that language about being used for a specific purpose would be repealed when MBUF is enacted.
So it should,
So two things. One, I'm hoping there'll be a fiscal note, but there will be, and that'll give us somewhat of an estimate of what this is going to generate. And the second thing is just at this very important meeting for my constituency on Monday, I did make comments about this as a revenue source, and I get that it's absolutely to fund. I support funding electrification. I'm just really hoping, as I'm going to continue to press over the next week, that this is creating budgetary flexibility so that Green Mountain Transit can see some stabilization dollars for what they're looking at, not the entire 2.7 million, but I'm hoping that these revenues are going to create some budgetary slack, so to speak, so as our largest public transit provider in the state doesn't collapse.
Well, I think for the short term, this is okay, for this year. And I guess anybody sitting around the table, you can revisit it. You cannot withstand it in a future bill. If in fact the revenues are such that you would say we need to, we have revenues that we want to allocate for the charging infrastructure, but we also want to use some of those revenues to support our public transit because of the work that they do to reduce carbon emissions. So I think at least for this T bill, and this year, making the connection with the people driving the cars, that it's a user fee and we're going to use it to support the network so that they feel comfortable and we support take up. But I do think in no way this precludes, even though we're tying it to the implementation of MBUF in the interim, it doesn't mean that we are locked in and we can't go back and revisit this allocation. And in next year or the following year, depending on how the revenues flow.
agreed on that. The agency, Ms. Boomhauer, I don't know if you've had much time, saw this before, but are you okay with this language?
Yeah, we worked closely with Donna on the modifications. And I'm also very excited to announce that yesterday, the notice of funding availability for the resources we're going to use to hopefully build the MBUF program if we get the grant, which we will be striving hard for since we have the match set aside, was announced. So
okay, finally announced, only 2 years late.
At least. Very exciting.
Hopefully it moves quicker from this point forward.
I have a
possible.
So at the beginning of this surcharge section, it has page 54, subsection B. It has that you're going to charge a surcharge equal to the amount of the annual fee collected in subsection A, which is $89. For an annual fee, but then for biannual, you're collecting 2 times the annual fee collected. That is more money than the biannual registration fee. Is that on purpose?
Yeah. Oh, you get a discount on your registration if you do 2 years, but you don't get a discount on your road usage surcharge.
Okay, perfect.
So you're adapting DMV to do some, to give them a discount on this would be complicated.
That works.
And then where did we talk? I wanted to talk about when this starts.
It's in the effective date section.
Okay, so section.
It doesn't have a section number. It's on page 61, line 15. Section A shall take effect on passage and shall be fully implemented not later than January 1, 2025. And then section C, which is page 61, subsection C, says it shall take effect on the effective date of a mileage-based user fee for pleasure cars.
I just wondered if we wanted to just make it January 1st to make it a little clearer and give enough time for Oh, look, I thought
No, we talked about that yesterday, and if we thought they could bring it online like in October, November, we wanted the flexibility to do that.
I know we talked about it. I was just reconsidering my position from yesterday,
Oh,
saying
oh.
that is there a value in just letting everybody know that it will be on January 1st instead of saying, well, it's going to be sometime between October and January 1st.
I think, if I may, I think once we understand clearly what the programming and rollout schedule will be, we will provide adequate public education. And if we're able to do all of that in advance of an October 1st start date, I think we want to start the sooner the better. But we appreciate the option to be able to do it earlier, but to start no later than January 1st.
Okay.
And what you're saying is that you would align the implementation date with what you think is an adequate upfront public information campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have my position on that has not evolved.
Okay. Any other non-evolving positions?
Your concern is if it went online in November, there just might be less awareness of.
We could just let people know right away it's going to be January 1st, and it's the new year, so that's maybe a time when people would more expect it. But my position hasn't evolved into a fossilized form yet, so it's not. I'm willing to keep it the way it is, and then see what DMV says about the time that they think is needed.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say is we have the names and addresses of all the owners of these vehicles.
Yeah.
So there will be a direct mailing to them, advising them as part of the education campaign. There will be dealer training so that when dealers are working out deals, that folks will know this is coming.
This is part of the cost.
And then when they close the deal, this is going to be part of the cost. And so I think the place where we need sort of the broad public education campaign is maybe for people contemplating purchase of electric vehicles, also people bringing them into the state from elsewhere. They may not be aware of Vermont's registration surcharge or road use surcharge. So it'll take a little bit of sort of understanding all the audiences, but I think we have Drive Electric Vermont who will be helping us frame appropriate engagement.
Okay. Okay, I'm okay. We can leave it with the way it is. Okay.
So, page 50,
I'm still willing to.
My yoke is still soft on that.
Yeah, it's okay.
page 55, beginning at the bottom, and I will say that we also didn't worry about page breaks because things are going to change.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of section B, which the text begins on page 56. This is the central garage fund, exactly as you saw on the second page yesterday. The same thing for page 56.
So we're adding language with our business.
This is the central garage.
This is the stuff that we did. This is stuff that was in.
No, this is what you are adding for being able to purchase the property.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I didn't read all that.
And then also saying that they, for this purpose only, they can use reserve funds for design services.
Right. Yeah.
And then section E is the railroad lease language that you saw yesterday.
Right. Section F is the new language that was presented.
Yes, and
UTCB.
And I do have one question that and it's at the very bottom of page 57. The sentence as it currently is enacted is a little bit odd, but when we changed it to include that clause at the beginning to the extent consistent with federal law, it then became very odd. And I think that the such projects at the bottom on page 21 needs to come out, but I didn't want to do it without making sure.
And you're on what page, Donna?
Page 57, the very bottom, there are two words that are in red on line 21, and I think they should come out, but I also wanted to make sure I wasn't somehow changing the meaning of the sentence if I.
It's a little weird to say projects and say such projects.
well, it also, the first part doesn't go anywhere if you have that semicolon there, to the extent.
Yeah, I agree.
So it doesn't change the meaning to take that out, or, okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure that. So the words "such projects" that are on page, and the semicolon on page 57, line 21 will be out in your next draft.
I mean, that's what we, I think it's clear what we're saying. We'll do that out. It's a little weird with it.
And then the next two sections, sections G and sections H, are the two reporting requirements that you decided when you were talking about reports that you wanted to take out of the green books?
Can I go back to the MVPCD?
Sure.
I don't remember talking about the C part, about the traffic control signals at intersections.
It's existing statutes.
Oh, that's existing, that's why we don't talk about it. Yeah, okay. We don't talk about all these.
So Donna, I have a question. The little asterisks, they're called ellipse. What is your term for those?
For the little, like on line 15 of page 58?
Yeah. No, between sections, for example, I don't know. Look on page 55, they're there, pleasure cars, those three, those are,
oh, I think they're called asterisks, yeah, and it indicates that we're not, that you're not.
But there's a term, I thought I've heard the term ellipse, but I don't see such a word in the dictionary. So do you know what it is?
Chapter? No, I remember
maybe
had
an
edit, the editing folks had a name.
Yeah, I don't know.
Section sign.
No, it's this. It's this part. It's the yeah, and it indicates that nothing is being changed. But
right.
If you don't include that, you could accidentally actually repeal it. So it's.
I know, but I thought there was a term for it, and I.
Sorry, I've been out of it too long. I don't remember what it is. It might be. Is it ellipsis? Is it maybe you didn't have the full, like, with an SES, maybe?
I don't know. Can't find it.
Can't find that either.
I can't find it in the dictionary.
Okay, well, that's something we will.
I will check it out and get back to you, Senator.
It has nothing to do. It's more of an inquiry.
It's a 2 a.m. question. Can't get it out of your head.
Oh, all right.
You can do a point of information on the floor.
Is it a dinkus?
I've never heard it called that.
What do 3 asterisks mean? And Wikipedia says it's a dinkus. What it says. Symbol has a variety of uses. It usually denotes an intentional omission or logical break of varying degree in a written work. A dinkus.
Yeah. What?
A dinkus.
Dinkus. How do you spell it?
D-I-N-K-U-S. A dinkus.
Is that in your dictionary?
I don't know. Let me take a look.
It even shows a picture. 3 asterisks.
Wikipedia comes up again.
Well,
now we've got to use dinkus. Oh, I thought I've heard it used, dinkus used as a derogatory term.
I think that's maybe without the US. All right.
Well, I guess maybe that piece is like they should be admitted. There's nothing admitted. There's nothing there.
I don't see it. I see dinky and dinkum and dinka.
I'll send you the link.
No, forget it.
We'll move on.
I'm sorry. Let's go back to the bill.
Donna will report back if the editors have a different term other than.
I just pulled up the drafting manual to see if I could find it quickly in there, but I didn't yet. So section G, page 58, line 16 is the earmarks reporting, and you decided when you talked about reports that you didn't need to have that in statute.
Mm-hmm.
So that is striking everything in subsection K of 19 BSA 7 and replacing it with the words repealed. And then section H, which is page 59, line 9, is also repealing the consolidated transportation reporting And that is page, subsection B, page 59, line 16. And so that's taking out all of that language and replacing it with repealed. Actually, not replacing with repealed, just getting rid of it.
I missed this discussion. I don't remember discussing this 10G report change. I remember it in the other context of the auditor's language, but what are we doing here? Did we
I
discuss
don't
this?
think this is a 10G. This H section X, this was, remember when we went through the big list of reports that we get?
Yeah, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah.
These reports we identified as not needing. Because we felt like we were already getting it, if I remember.
Right.
And then that leaves you with the effective dates, and you already discussed page 61 for section A and section C. But then if you look at section A of the effective dates, you would also be adding in the central garage purchase of real property, which is called section B currently, and the railroad leases, section E, to take effect on passage. And then on the very back page 62, all other sections take effect on July 1 of this year.
Okay, so the one thing, I don't know. Gina sent me today, I haven't looked at my email, but there might be some language on transportation buildings that we could add. I think that's everything else we're gonna add. I think the main issue for us is the central garage transfer. One of the things that I was thinking, before I really understood what they were doing, is that would be some of the money that we could free up for public transit. We could free up the electric bike, but that's only $140,000. So that's short of what might make the difference in their situation. So
Could we use any of the carbon reduction money that the agency gets for that purpose? Is that a permissible use?
I can speak to that. So, to the extent that there was going to be electrification or a significant increase in transit services, which I don't think is the appropriate framework here.
Yeah, okay.
And they already have like more electrification challenges than they can deal with right at this moment.
No, they need operating money.
Yeah.
So I assumed that would be your answer, but.
So where was the money when we talked about, when we had the first walkthrough, we talked about money for the electric transit vans?
Oh, the sprinters, they took that out.
Where?
Of public.
That's carbon reduction program funds. And that was in our proposed, it was in the public transit budget, and they reduced that by 2.7 million, is that right, Logan?
1.7.
1.7.
So that's where they got the 1.7. They took it out of public transit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Central garage, and took out the central garage other money. Yeah. To give money to do other things that they wanted to do.
Yeah. Mhm. Is that something we can discuss next week, the money?
Yeah, and I think that's good. That's kind of, I think we're pretty good on all the other sections about what we're keeping, what we're getting out, the changes we've made, this little thing about transportation buildings. And then it's really these two transfers, whether we support any of it or all of it or none of it. And then if we have any other things that we can do to.
Yeah, well, that's where our revenues from this surcharge would help us, because that would give a revenue source that would perhaps alter how they were proposing to get money to do certain things.
Right, but they were taking it from central garage.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
And I'm really concerned about taking anything out of public transit for the Sprinter, because I do think, although that doesn't address the problem with Green Mountain Transit and their operating costs, it does support, I think, the nimbleness and the ability the transit agencies to respond to, be more responsive to individual household needs. So I have reservations about going there, for that 1.7. And also what we're doing with the central garage. So I would like to have more conversation, obviously.
Yeah, we'll have more conversation. Was the whole 1.7 for sprinter vans?
Yeah, it was carbon reduction program funding, total of 4 million put into the public transit budget, of which 1.7 was going to go out again.
To vans, which could be.
It's all for vans.
It's all for vans, also mainly for under MTI kind of type grants or microtransit, but it could be like Senator Chisholm's point that GMT might have to do some sprinter vans, that they could apply for that.
I was gonna make note of that one of the things we've been talking to the general manager at GMT about is that, their organizational assessment, which is in progress still, is pointing towards the potential for, microtransit to be a more appropriate framework. And also, it could be that some of their commuter routes they could see a reduction in the type of capital investments they make. So instead of having big buses driving to Jeffersonville, depending on their ridership, maybe they have a van.
And maybe 2 vans is better, like two different trips an hour apart is better than one big one time a day. Okay, so we have more discussions there, but other than that, I think we're looking pretty good to possibly wrap it up.
You're having GMT in on Thursday.
Next week, Wednesday. So we'll hear from them. I don't know if we would really be able to vote on it by next Friday, but it's feasible if we have a solution that we want to do. But that gets us, is next week April?
Still March right now, so I think we're good. We're good.
Yeah, so I think we usually try to finish this up in the first half of April. And then when we don't have any other bills we're trying to move, we would hear back on the DMV and the ATLE.
Did they do anything with that license plate, the veterans thing?
They have not done it yet. It's still in their committee. So unless there's other questions for Dr.
They actually put it into 309.
Oh, they did.
Oh, thank you, Donna. I just got your email. That's the word I'm looking for. It was double L. That's why I couldn't find it.
What was it called?
Ellipsis,
It was ellipsis.
but it's double L.
Yeah.
Wikipedia says it's a dinkus.
I like Dinkus way better.
But I liked it, not to be confused with dingbat. I thought that was great on your,
Right.
Oh, thank you. Now you've answered it. It's double L. I should have looked.
What is the dingbat? I remember it is one of the keyboard symbols. Is it dingbat?
You'll look it up for us. But to answer your question about the veterans plates,
Yeah.
all of it without any changes was put into the strike all of 309 yesterday.
Okay, and are they done with 309?
They're very close to being done, and they've changed very little of what you did. They've added a few things, and I will have when I come in on Monday, I'm going to finalize things, but I'll leave you a side by side and where it is.
Okay, so I guess that's one that I guess we have to wait till they're done, but that would be something Megan or Jen Darby to come in and Donna side by side. Okay, anything else for Donna?
Dingbat is an ornament. Printer's character, very different examples. So these
Oh,
are-
that's like when you're like, when people are doing cussing and they just do those, that's dingbat.
It doesn't say cussing, but that makes sense to me.
Right.
Oh,
You had a different,
okay, like the.
we're out of sync with Wikipedia.
So we're ahead of it. Okay, so with that, we can adjourn.